lab was quiet, the soft hum of machines filling the air. A single beam of light fell across the desk, illuminating tiny glass containers filled with strange, shimmering particles. Dr. Elias, a scientist with a restless curiosity, leaned closer, peering at the experiment that had consumed his life for months. Something about this moment felt different, almost electric. He had been studying the behavior of particles in a quantum field for years, reading every paper, conducting experiment after experiment, but tonight, something unusual happened. As he focused on the particles, they began to shift in ways he had never seen, moving not randomly, but as if aware of his gaze. The data on his screen blinked rapidly, showing patterns that seemed impossible, patterns that hinted at a connection between mind and matter. Elias rubbed his eyes, thinking it was a mistake, a glitch in the instruments. Yet when he looked again, the particles responded in exactly the same way, mirroring his attention. It was as if the very act of watching was changing reality itself. A chill ran down his spine, because he realized that this was not just science, it was something far stranger, something that suggested consciousness could influence the world in ways people had only imagined. He remembered the words of a mentor long ago. Observation is not passive, it shapes what is observed. Those words had seemed philosophical then, but now, staring at the glowing particles, they felt like a warning, a revelation. Elias's mind raced, thinking of the possibilities. If his focus could influence particles in a lab, could the same principle apply to life, to choices, to the reality people lived every day? Could this small, invisible effect be the secret behind manifestation? The idea that thoughts and attention could subtly guide outcomes. The night deepened, and the lab felt both familiar and alien, shadows stretching across the walls like dark fingers. Elias's heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with wonder. He reached out, as if to touch the experiment, and the particles shifted again, responding not to his hands, but to his awareness. A thrill of awe washed over him, a mix of excitement and disbelief. The discovery was simple in appearance, yet it carried a weight of possibility that made the world seem larger, stranger, more alive than ever. He thought of everyday life, how people chase goals, struggle with habits, hope for change. What if, he wondered, it was not just effort or luck that shaped outcomes, but attention, intention, consciousness itself? The scientist's curiosity turned into a quiet determination. He knew he had stumbled on a mystery that demanded exploration, a question that could not be ignored. If he could understand this, if he could explain it, it might change how people saw themselves, their choices, and the reality they lived in. Elias sat back, taking a deep breath, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. He realized that the secret was not hidden in complex equations or advanced technology, but in the act of observation itself, something as simple as awareness, focus, and attention, something that anyone could practice, yet few understood. The particles glowed softly in the dim light, like tiny mirrors reflecting his wonder, reminding him that the universe might be far more responsive than he had ever dared to imagine. And in that quiet lab, with the night pressing in and the mystery unfolding before him, Elias felt a spark of possibility, a whisper of a secret waiting to be revealed, something that could turn understanding into power, knowledge into transformation. He did not yet know the full answer, but he knew one thing with certainty: reality, in some small, profound way, was listening. After the night of discovery, Dr. Elias could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The particles in his lab seemed to respond to attention itself. But how could this be explained? He began to revisit the foundations of quantum physics, reading and rereading theories that once seemed abstract and distant. Now, they appeared alive, hinting at something deeply connected to consciousness. He remembered the strange principle he had studied before, the observer effect. In quantum experiments, the act of observing a particle could change how it behaved. The particle was not fixed in one state until it was observed. It existed in a field of possibilities, waiting for the observer's focus to collapse it into reality. It was as if the universe was offering options, and attention chose which path would emerge. Elias imagined a single photon, a tiny particle of light, traveling through space. Without observation, it could act like a wave, spreading everywhere at once. But when measured, it chose a path, a location. This simple act of watching changed the outcome, revealing that reality might not be as fixed as people assumed. It was a strange, almost magical idea, yet it was firmly rooted in science. He began to experiment further, carefully, repeating tests over and over. With each attempt, he saw subtle responses, patterns that hinted at a connection between focus and outcome. The evidence was small, almost imperceptible, but consistent. It suggested that awareness was not passive. It played a role in shaping what appeared in reality. Elias's excitement grew, because this was more than a lab curiosity. It was a bridge between science and human experience. He thought about consciousness, the mind that could observe particles. Could the same principle apply to everyday life, to choices, habits, and desires? Could focusing attention on a goal influence the likelihood of it becoming real? It was not about magic or force, but about alignment, observation, and intention. The universe might be more like a responsive partner than a fixed machine. Elias began to explain this to himself in simple terms, as if teaching a curious student. "Think of possibilities like seeds floating in a field," he said quietly. "Each thought is like sunlight or water, nourishing certain seeds while leaving others untouched. By observing and focusing on a specific outcome, one could subtly encourage certain possibilities to grow." The science did not promise miracles, but it offered a principle. Attention mattered, and awareness had power. As the hours passed, the lab transformed from a place of experiments to a place of wonder. The machines hummed, the particles shimmered, and the universe felt closer, more intimate. Elias felt a quiet sense of responsibility, because understanding this principle meant understanding the role of consciousness in reality itself. It was a door opening to both science and philosophy, bridging the gap between the known and the mysterious. He imagined the possibilities for life if attention shaped outcomes, if observation guided reality. Then change was not just external, it started within. Focus and awareness could become tools for transformation. Small shifts in attention could ripple outward, influencing not only the particles in the lab but the life outside the walls of the building. Elias smiled at the thought, knowing this was only the beginning. The observer effect was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It had become a map, a hint at a secret hidden in plain sight. The secret was simple yet profound. Reality listened to awareness. Subtle shifts in attention could influence outcomes. And consciousness was not separate from the world, but intimately woven into it. Elias felt a growing excitement, because understanding this might unlock something extraordinary. And as the first rays of morning crept into the lab, he realized that science had revealed a truth that was almost poetic. The universe was responsive, attention was powerful, and a simple act of observing could be the first step toward manifesting change. He leaned back in his chair, eyes bright with curiosity, ready to explore what this secret could mean for life itself. Dr. Elias sat quietly in the lab, watching the soft glow of the machines as a new question formed in his mind. If observation could influence tiny particles, what did that mean for the human mind? What exactly was consciousness? And how deeply was it connected to the reality people experienced every day? For years, scientists had studied the brain, mapping neurons and electrical signals, but consciousness itself remained a mystery. No one could fully explain why awareness existed, or how the simple act of noticing something could feel so powerful. Yet every human being experienced it constantly. Every thought, every decision, every moment of attention was guided by this invisible force called consciousness. Elias began to look beyond the laboratory and into everyday life. He noticed how people who believed in their goals often worked with greater focus and determination, while those who expected failure seemed to struggle before they even began. It was not magic, but it revealed something interesting about the mind. Attention and belief appeared to shape actions, and actions shaped results. He remembered stories of athletes who visualized their success before a competition, imagining every movement and every victory in their minds. Many of them claimed this mental focus helped them perform better when the real moment arrived. The brain seemed to respond to these mental images as if they were real experiences, strengthening pathways and preparing the body for action. Elias realized that consciousness might act like a lens, focusing the mind on certain possibilities while ignoring others. When attention stayed fixed on fear or doubt, those feelings grew stronger, influencing choices and behavior. But when attention turned toward hope, solutions, and clear goals, the mind began to notice opportunities that had always been there, waiting to be seen. The scientist leaned forward, fascinated by this idea, because it suggested that reality was not just something that happened to people. It was also something they participated in creating through their awareness and choices. Every moment of focus was like a quiet vote for a certain outcome, guiding actions and shaping the direction of life. He thought about how often people lived on autopilot, moving through their days without truly noticing their thoughts. Worries repeated themselves like old recordings, while positive possibilities were often ignored. Yet the observer effect in quantum physics hinted at something powerful. The act of observing changed the system being observed. Could the same principle apply to the inner world of the mind? If someone became aware of their thoughts and gently shifted their attention toward what they truly wanted, could that begin to change their reality step by step? Elias believed the answer might be yes, not because thoughts magically changed the universe, but because awareness changed perception, decisions, and actions. The more he reflected on this idea, the clearer it became. Consciousness was not separate from reality. It was part of the process that shaped it. Human attention influenced behavior, behavior influenced events, and events shaped the life a person experienced. It was like a chain reaction that began with something very simple: awareness. Elias walked slowly to the window of the lab, watching the morning light spread across the city. People were beginning their day, each carrying hopes, worries, dreams, and plans. Most of them did not realize that their attention might be quietly shaping the direction of their lives, guiding them towards certain possibilities while turning away from others. In that moment, the scientist felt a deep sense of wonder. The universe of particles he studied and the universe of human experience might not be so different after all. Both seemed to respond to observation, focus, and awareness. And if that was true, then every person carried a hidden ability within them, the ability to observe their thoughts, guide their attention, and slowly shape the path of their reality. A simple idea, yet one filled with enormous potential. Elias turned back toward the glowing machines, knowing that the mystery was growing deeper. Because if consciousness truly played a role in shaping reality, then the next question was even more exciting. How could someone use this understanding to transform their life? Dr. Elias stood quietly beside the glowing machines, his mind turning over everything he had learned: the strange behavior of particles, the power of observation, the role of consciousness in shaping experience. All the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, and the picture they formed was both simple and astonishing. For weeks he had searched for a complicated answer, something hidden in long equations or advanced technology, but the truth he was beginning to see was far simpler than he expected. The secret was not in the machines around him, but in the way attention worked inside the human mind. He walked slowly across the lab, thinking about the observer effect once more. In the quantum world, particles existed in many possible states until they were observed. The moment attention focused on them, one possibility became real while the others faded away. It was like choosing one path from a forest of invisible roads. Elias suddenly realized something powerful. Human life might work in a similar way. Every day people stand in a field of possibilities, different outcomes waiting quietly in front of them. Some lead toward growth and opportunity, others toward fear and limitation. Yet the path that becomes real is often the one that receives the most attention and belief. The scientist felt a rush of clarity. The secret behind quantum manifestation was not about forcing reality or controlling the universe. It was about directing awareness. When attention stays focused on a clear intention, the mind begins to align thoughts, emotions, and actions with that direction. Slowly, step by step, the chosen possibility becomes more likely to appear in real life. He imagined a person who constantly focuses on failure, repeating thoughts of doubt and fear every day. That person might unknowingly guide their actions toward hesitation and missed opportunities. But another person who calmly focuses on growth, solutions, and possibility begins to notice different choices, different chances, and different results. In this way, attention acts like a quiet guide, shaping how people see the world and how they move through it. The universe does not suddenly change overnight, but perception changes first. Actions follow perception, and results follow actions. What once seemed like coincidence begins to look like a pattern created by awareness itself. Elias smiled slightly. As the idea settled in his mind, the secret was powerful, yet beautifully simple. Observe your thoughts. Choose where your attention goes, and focus steadily on the reality you want to create. Over time, the mind, the body, and the environment begin to align with that focus. He remembered how many people searched for complicated systems to change their lives, believing the answer must be hidden somewhere far away. Yet the ability to guide attention had always been there, inside every person, waiting to be used with intention and awareness. The scientists looked again at the glowing particles in the chamber. They shimmered quietly, responding to observation just as they had before. In that moment they seemed like tiny teachers, reminding him that reality was not a rigid structure, but a living system full of possibilities. A deep sense of excitement filled the room, because if this principle was true, it meant that anyone could begin experimenting with their own attention. They could choose what to observe in their thoughts, what to believe in their mind, and what direction to follow in their life. The discovery did not promise instant miracles, but it offered something far more powerful. It showed that awareness was a creative force, subtle yet real, shaping the path between possibility and reality. And as Elias stood there, watching the quiet dance of particles in the dim light, he realized that the greatest experiment was no longer happening inside the laboratory. It was happening inside the human mind, where attention could turn invisible possibilities into a lived reality. Dr. Elias knew that understanding a principle was only the beginning. The real question was how a person could use this idea in everyday life. If attention truly shaped perception and influenced outcomes, then learning to guide attention could become a powerful skill. He sat at his desk and began writing simple steps, not complicated theories, but practical actions that anyone could try. Because the secret of manifestation was not about forcing reality, it was about training awareness. The first step, he wrote, was observation. Most people move through their day without noticing their thoughts. Worries repeat again and again, doubts appear automatic, and attention drifts without direction. Elias believed the first change must begin with awareness. Simply noticing thoughts without judgment could reveal how much attention was being spent on fear instead of possibility. The second step was intention. Once a person became aware of their thoughts, they could gently choose a direction. Instead of focusing on what they feared, they could begin focusing on what they truly wanted. This did not mean ignoring problems, but it meant giving more attention to solutions, growth, and opportunities. Elias explained this idea like adjusting a compass. A compass does not move the traveler instantly to their destination, but it ensures they walk in the right direction. Attention worked the same way, guiding decisions, habits, and daily actions toward a chosen outcome. The third step was visualization. The scientists had studied how the brain responds to mental images. When people imagine an experience clearly, the brain activates many of the same pathways it would use during the real event. This is why athletes often visualize success before competitions. Their minds prepare the body for the moment before it arrives. Elias believed this could be used in everyday life. A person could take a few quiet minutes each day to imagine the life they wanted to build, seeing the goal clearly, feeling the emotions connected to it, and imagining the actions needed to reach it. This practice strengthened focus and kept attention aligned with intention. The fourth step was consistent focus. Many people think about their goals for a short time, and then quickly return to old habits of doubt and distraction. But manifestation required patience and steady attention. Small moments of focus repeated every day slowly reshaped the mind's patterns, guiding behavior in a new direction. Elias compared this process to planting a seed. A seed does not grow instantly after it is planted. It needs sunlight, water, and time. Attention worked like sunlight for the mind, nourishing certain possibilities until they slowly grew into real outcomes. The fifth step was action, because attention alone was not enough. Focus changed perception, but perception guided behavior. When someone noticed opportunities, they could take small steps toward them. Each action reinforced the intention behind it, turning thoughts into movement and movement into results. Elias felt satisfied as he looked at the steps written on the page. They were simple enough for anyone to try, yet powerful enough to slowly transform a person's path. The idea was not about controlling the universe, but about aligning attention, thought, and action toward a chosen future. He imagined people everywhere beginning this quiet experiment in their own lives, observing their thoughts, choosing their focus, visualizing their goals, and taking small steps forward each day. Over time, they might begin to notice subtle changes, new opportunities appearing, confidence growing, and reality slowly shifting in response to their awareness. The scientist leaned back in his chair with a calm smile, because the mystery that had started with tiny particles in a laboratory was now becoming something much larger. It was becoming a practical guide for how consciousness and attention could help shape the direction of a human life. The laboratory was quiet once again, but Dr. Elias felt that everything had changed. What began as a small scientific curiosity had grown into a powerful understanding about life. The connection between observation, consciousness, and reality was no longer just an abstract idea. It was a perspective that could transform how people saw themselves and the world around them. He stood by the window of the lab, watching the city moving slowly in the early morning light. Thousands of people were beginning their day, walking to work, making plans, solving problems, chasing dreams. Most of them believed that reality was something fixed and external, something that simply happened to them. But Elias now saw something different. He saw a world filled with possibilities, where awareness quietly shaped the direction of every life. Each thought, each moment of attention, each decision was like a small signal sent into the future, guiding the path that would slowly unfold. He thought about the people who might discover this idea for the first time. Someone struggling with doubt might begin observing their thoughts and slowly shift their focus toward confidence. Another person searching for purpose might begin visualizing the life they truly wanted and taking small steps toward it each day. Over time, those small changes in attention could grow into powerful transformations. The scientists realized that this understanding carried an important message. The power of manifestation was not about controlling the universe or demanding instant results. It was about participation, about realizing that consciousness was part of the process that shaped reality. When attention changed, perception changed. When perception changed, actions changed. Actions changed. And when actions changed, life itself began to move in a new direction. He remembered the glowing particles in the lab, quietly responding to observation. Their behavior had revealed something deeply meaningful. The universe might not be a rigid system that ignored human awareness. It might be a dynamic field of possibilities that responded to attention in subtle but important ways. Elias smiled softly as he thought about how simple the secret truly was. Anyone could begin experimenting with it at any moment. All it required was awareness, intention, and consistent focus. No special equipment, no complicated formulas, just the willingness to observe the mind and guide attention toward a chosen future. Outside the window, the city was now fully awake. People were moving quickly through the streets, each carrying their own thoughts and dreams. Some were focused on problems and fears, while others were focused on ideas and opportunities. And without realizing it, those patterns of attention were slowly shaping the direction of their lives. The scientists felt a quiet sense of hope, because the discovery meant that change was always possible. A person did not need to control every event in the world. They only needed to become aware of where their attention was going and gently guide it toward the reality they wanted to create. He turned away from the window and looked once more at the instruments in the lab, remembering the moment when the particles first responded to his observation. That moment had started a journey that connected science, consciousness, and philosophy in a beautiful and unexpected way. And as the light filled the room and a new day began, Elias understood something profound. Reality might be far more responsive than people ever imagined, and the simple act of conscious attention could be the first step toward creating a new future. Because in the quiet space between thought and action, between observation and reality, a powerful truth waited to be discovered. The universe was not only something people lived inside, it was something they were constantly shaping with their awareness, one moment of attention at a time.